So this morning I wake up with the chickens because last night I checked the weather and they said there's no chance of rain. What they didn't say is there's no chance a hurricane is coming through. So what I have to sequence up today, and I'm sure I'll make the most of it. I wanted to get Luciano's parts in white. That might be a little difficult with the wind howling, but we will get it. And I want to finish the wheel, get it up on the balancer, get the tire off, and get it ready for its priming. Every day I try to make it so it's a little bit different than the day before. I can't stand groundhog days. I can't stand being in the middle of a day and saying, I already lived this day yesterday. And no matter what part of this project I work on, it just seems like every part has been more fun than I anticipated. And I'm sure a couple of months from now we'll have ourselves, well, for the rest of my life, I hope. However long that is, I can hear you laughing. I hope this is going to be one fun bike to have for many, many years to come. And thank you, Luciano and Pokey, for your help getting the new front end. It's supposed to be shipped today. We'll have it in about a week. And we'll have a nice new front end on a bike that isn't bent. That'll be a real thrill. I'm not sure you can see or feel the wind blowing, but boy, it is blowing, baby. Wow. And the ice tells me we're way below freezing today. But no matter how cold it gets, in my house, the coffee is always hot. So the real feel in Rutherford, New Jersey right now is 10 degrees, but it's really 25, so warm as toast. Great for great painting weather, by the way. So I tried to sequence up a productive day here. Now normally on a day this cold, I'd want to be doing something other than painting, but it's going to warm up. Probably go up to 30 degrees by lunchtime, so I'll try to get everything prepped. And if the wind, God forbid the wind stops blowing. Boy, waited so long for the rain to stop, and now I got to deal with the wind. So the first thing will be to get Luciano's parts all prepped up, get the paint mixed so that if the wind ever does subside today, we can get the white on there. That'll be one goal. And goal 2 would be to get the tire removed, the valve removed, get the wheel prepped, masked, the final sanding on it. Now we've got a full day's work. And luckily I spent a couple days ago, I brought in all the stuff for tire changing down into the cellar. So that, number one, so the tools would even be warm. Just touching them, when they're freezing cold, it's terrible. So the first thing I want to do, I want to just very, very lightly sand this primer, because there still is a lot of, from the paint underneath, a lot of orange peel. I'd like this white to lay down nice and flat. Sand it all down wet with some Indasa 600. Now, this is a very, very light sanding. This is one of the steps you probably could even skip if you weren't looking to make this as nice as possible, but because Luciano's been such a good friend, we'll give him a little extra sanding. This will make it even a little bit nicer, I know. And these parts, actually, this is from a really old bike. It's a 1980, I think, or an 82, I'm not sure. But the parts are in pretty nice shape, and other than the fact that they didn't care for that Rust-Oleum paint, but I think they're going to like what we put on there now. I guess we're going to find out. Finding out is always so much fun. So getting this sanded down, I think what I'll do is hope that from looking at the weather, it's probably going to be like this all day, so I'll just have to paint right up against the house. And there's always the workarounds. Anything I do in this shop, if you have a heated environment and you have unlimited coffee and whatever, but it's nice. But when you don't, you just got to work around everything. And we're pretty good at working around things. Again, the same thing with the tank. Just a light sanding. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but I do want to get out some of the orange peel that's still left over from the Rust-Oleum that you can't really do a lot about. And I'm really hoping that wind starts to die down, but you know what? It looks like it's not going to die down, so I guess I'm going to have to resequence what I wanted to do today to a certain degree. And That's always one of the things I always keep in mind, is to stay flexible. Don't make plans that you can't change if a tsunami comes to your house or something. Anyway, this is going to be real nice. This is almost overkill, but I think it's worth it. And anytime you're working on somebody's custom bike, you know that the finish is going to be one of the first things they see. The wheels, the finish. And I know Luciano's got a nice seat for this bike. This should really be nice. He told me yesterday he already has the frame modified to take the seat. And hopefully next week or sooner or later we'll get up to his house. We've just been real busy with stuff around here. Now that's about all the sanding I want to do to this. I want to get it tack ragged down and get the paint mixed so that the minute, if we get a break in the weather, or if at least if it goes to you know, something warm like 28 or something. What happened, I went through on a couple of spots by these emblems, so I'm going to put another coat of primer on it. Just dealing with this wind is really a pain. See, I'm trying to paint right in the corner of the house here where, needless to say, everything's an adventure. But I don't want to have any spots where there is no primer. That's the whole issue. The primer is going to seal, so if I go through on anything, I've got to reprime. So I didn't want to leave this information out because this is sealer, and because we're going over Rust-Oleum. I had sanded through, and I noticed I sanded through a couple spots. I put a fresh coat of primer on everything. I got it sitting under a heating vent. Let it sit there for about an hour. I've got plenty of other things to do here while that's drying. So what I wanted to show here, this is the paint that Luciano supplied with the job. And I have no idea if there's any thinner at all in here, or in this case what we'd like to have is low penetrating thinner, which I have. But I'll do a little test and make sure this is, it looks like he already put some thinner in here. I don't know if he did. Doesn't matter, because if this doesn't work out, and I think we're going to use most of that or all of it. We also have some extra paint, a brand new unopened can with the number. So if we want to paint another bike the same color. White can be very tricky if you're trying to match it. In this case, we're only going to have a white stripe in the ladders. But we want that white to be white. If it's gray, the ladders are going to look crappy. And it's a lot of time to mask off the ladders and get it right and make patterns and everything. So the last thing you would want to do is to have it all done, and then you pull off the tape and it's gray. Now you've done. It's a disaster. So I'm going to do a little paint test on this, see if it needs a little more thinner. But I know this will need 50-50 low penetrating thinner if and when we go into the can. We would like to have, in a perfect world, 3 coats of white about 20 minutes apart. So after testing this, it's pretty obvious that there wasn't enough thinner in there to do the paint. So what I'm going to do is mix it. I'm going to assume there's no thinner in there. And I'll make a 50-50 mix and do that test. And if that's too thin, I could just add some paint. But this is the key here. I don't want to have the thinner, especially in cold weather, thinner penetrates much further. So if I put high gloss thinner on this, it's going to, in the morning, I'm going to have an alligator. So I'm going to have to be real careful and give it 20 minutes under the heating vent here. Luckily, today is not a day I'm going to be babysitting Miles here. It's actually a birthday party. It's Rob's birthday party. So we're going to be out of here and going to a birthday party. But I would like to get the white painted today. I'd like to get all 3 coats on, even if it's really inconvenient. No, it was really tough painting out there today. Wow. This was a difficult paint. But we do have 3 coats of white on, and we're ready to move on. The next day we get to work on this. This obviously will dry a day or two. We're ready to mask off the ladders. So while we're having a nice coffee break, waiting for the paint, see how the paint dries up, planning out the resequencing of the day. I see Karen's is sequencing up 2 pots of soup. Sequencing up another pot of coffee.
To take away the bird feeder.
Yeah, the bird feed is blowing away. My poor bird feed is blowing against the window, but the coffee's warm. Boy, the things we do for motorcycling. So after a decent coffee break, and boy, the conditions out there are brutal. We are right, I got these right up by the heating vent. And it's funny, anytime you're working on multiple projects, sequencing is important, and being able to put the stuff on various tables is important, and keep track of what you're doing. Now, I always try to keep all my tire changing stuff in one bucket, and that has worked well for me. As an example, valve removal tools, something we're going to use right now. And I always have an extra one, of course, because I'm always misplacing this stuff. So next step on this, and I want to do this methodically because I'm really happy that I can do this inside and not outside. It's such a nice thing to be in a shop right now. It's like a Florida vacation being here. It's really unbelievably good. Anyway, these are Curvy Girl valves, and we've had really good luck with them. Next step is to use the Harbor Freight bead breaker, and one of the things that helps is I always put a towel. I already have some black tape over the spots that tend to chew up the wheel. Because in this case, it won't matter. If we scratch this, we'll just sand it out. But once the wheel is painted, I want to have it as nice as I always want to have it as nice as possible. And one thing is a big help on my bead breaker. I put this fork leg. Chuck actually gave me this fork leg. I think it's from a dirt bike. It doesn't even matter. Or a piece of pipe. Just so you have more leverage. The towel is a good tip. This, of course, the thing is, I had a $25 tool, so you change one tire and you've saved enough to pay for the tool. So the next step is to get the Curvy Girl valve stem off. And these, like I said, these have really worked well. I got to keep the area where they are very, very nice and clean and flat. I don't want to destroy that little rubber washer that's in there. I want to just take it out ever so slow. And it looks like we've got it out in one piece. Now I may have to see if I want to polish these instead of having a red anodizing, because the red is now not going to match anything. It'd be easy to polish that. That would be a nice little addition. Now the next thing for me is I want to simple green everything down again, because I've touched it with greasy gloves and whatnot. I want to do a thorough cleaning. I like to do this several times over the course of working on a wheel. So when I actually get done with the final around here, I'm using tools and everything. And what happens here is you just put so much time into something, you don't want to take any high risk or any low risk things. I don't want any risk. I want to make sure this is going to be perfect. The same way I hope Luciano's job is going to be perfect, because we have really taken the time and done it right and put the right dry times in, and we've done everything to stack the deck. Now look, this is a tip-off. The fact that, of course, I bought the bike after it was 20 years old or something. it has written on it what the rim this is. It means this is not the rim that came with the bike. That's number one. So, and I know this bike had been in an accident, why I got it for, you know, cheap money. And so here's the bottom line of everything though. When we have that new fork coming, and thank you Pokey and what do you call it, Luciano, and get that installed. Now it may not be a giant increase, but I'm sure it's not going to be worse having straight forks. But this is so funny because people have told me a bike with bent forks is a real, handles terrible and everything. I've had a lot of fun with it. So and had a lot of fun without spending a lot of money and without making car payments or anything. Okay, so that's clean. Now the next step on this is going to be, I want to clean this inner part of the wheel over on the big wire brush. Now there are a couple of critical areas on this. What's going to happen is the paint is going to go around here, and this edge I'm going to see, but I don't know exactly where it's going to end based on which tire I'm using. Some of the tires come out a little more, some don't. So I want to make sure this edge is perfect. I've wire brushed it, and I want to take, this is 220. I want to make sure I have a good scuff on that because that's where the paint is going to want to peel. When you hit that with a tire iron or changing a tire or whatever. And we usually change the tires without tools and we cut the old tire off, so that isn't a big problem. But and we've done that on video enough times that if you were interested in that, you just could flash back to it. But just key in on my channel tire changing and about, I don't know, a dozen or so videos come up. But that's a good way if you have painted wheels or anodized wheels, something you don't want to put a big chip in. If you don't, if you just have flat black wheels, you just go get the barbecue paint and that's it. Anyway, this is going to take a little time. I want this edge to be really, really nice. I'm not going to try to compromise it. And I've got to clean up that area where the tire valve was. And then do all the back masking. And actually, this is going to be ready to paint, I hope, today. Depending on what the boss says. The soup kitchen up there. Literally soup kitchen. Anyway, we are going to spend some time doing this step. This is one that's going to take a little time. But in the end, these are all the things that when you do a forever bike, and I like to think all my bikes are forever bikes. Because I don't flip bikes. I don't just say, that's good enough. You know, that I'm going to buy another bike next week anyway. Now what I do is I have a bunch of these that when I plug where the valve is, this diameter is exactly the size of the one that's going to go back into the curvy girl. Now, the only issue with this one is, I was hoping I'd have, well, I guess it doesn't matter. It doesn't sit exactly in the middle, so what I'm going to have to do, this is a good trick, good tip, whatever you want to call it, and it doesn't really matter which one we use. I'm just going to wrap it with some striping tape until I get enough diameter on there that it's going to be a press fit. And you can just, this is not like within thousandths, but I want it to be, I'll just take a guess at what the diameter is. A little bit more. Because I don't want paint getting down in that hole. That's where the valve has to seal. I've dressed it all off with 600 paper, get it nice and smooth. But I want this to be a nice tight press fit. Okay, now that's a little bit too much, which is good. I'm showing just how you can do this like a machinist. But even little details like this, when you get them right in the final, when you have the bike finished, perfect. You don't even have to, we'll put a nut on it anyway. But for sure, a little precision detail like this makes all the difference. Now I want to thank Pokey. Pokey graciously donated this to our cause years ago. And it's from Harbor Freight, of course. what else? Real surprise there. But anyway, having a wheel balancer now for painting a wheel. Now I'll cover this with tin foil, of course. What I want to do is back mask all the areas up here that where the tire is going to run on this ridge. I don't want to have paint in there. So I'm going to very carefully back mask that off now. Now it's very convenient that we have this tape left over from doing the ladders on the FZR. It fits right into that groove, exactly the amount we want to have. Of course I want to back mask the center. This makes it very easy. In the past this has been a little bit more of a job, but that's like, I guess it's almost worth buying a roll of this tape just to if you're going to do wheels. Anyway, we're getting ready, and I think we're going to get some primer on this, even though the wind is still howling out there. These are real battle conditions. I mean, I take up the challenge to this stuff all the time, but it's a lot more fun painting if the wind isn't blowing. The cold doesn't really stop anything, but that wind can really make it miserable. Now look, we got one side, one edge done. Boy, that couldn't have gone any better. Now, just before I'm ready to paint this, I'm looking for any other flaws. I have the prep wall. I want to carefully wipe this down and prep it. The wind is still howling, so there's no real rush. I thought we were going to get a break. Sometimes you do get it puffs down a little bit, but not today. It knows I'm painting. It's funny how that happens. But it's this, absolutely, this edge right here where I'm doing right now, that's the most critical part. If you do have a paint issue, that's where it's going to be. I'll let the prep wall dry. I'm going to use self-etching primer on it. And by the way, it is worth whatever you pay for one of these. And I don't know because Pokey bought it. And they're probably $25 in Harbor Freight or something very realistic. But even if you're just going to paint a wheel, if you're not going to change your own tires, it's worth having this. This is such a useful tool. There's so many things that when the price is reasonable, it's worth having a tool. Now in this case, I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes and get set up outside. Because what I would like to do is get 3 coats of primer on, about 20 minutes between coats. That's then to set, if that'll dry overnight, or even longer would be better, up by the heating vent somewhere. Luciano's stuff is up there now. But then I want to carefully sand that. That'll fill in any of the little imperfections in this. And I think we've got most of them. Maybe we've got all of them. It's always amazing how something looks, and when you paint it, it looks like it's $1 million. It looks so much better. Now another really simple tip, as I pick away at this, I found a couple little flaws that I missed. A really good tip, if you do all this sanding, at the very end of it, just touch everything with sandpaper lightly, and then prime it right away. What happens with any aluminum, it oxidizes very quickly. Actually, everything does. It's oxidizing minutes after you've sanded it, but you don't want to trap any oxidation under the paint if possible. So we're going to try to get this just lightly, just touch everything with sandpaper and get it outside. So far it looks pretty good, but every once in a while when you do this, and the phone rings or you know, who knows what, they arrest you for murder. It's something that's just annoying. Now we got all the tin foil on, and we are ready to go sailboating. Now we're going to try to get this painted. Self-etching primer is great for aluminum or for metal or for steel. Really, when you're trying to seal something though, that sealer primer is a lot better. And that's what we used on Luciano's job. We were trying to seal it. Well, this one we're just trying to etch and get a good bond. The idea of doing it is not to get a lot of paint buildup around the edge here. I don't want the edge, I don't want the paint to be real thick here, because that's where we're going to be putting the wheel stripe. We're going to have to put masking tape there and everything. I just want that to have just a minimum amount. Up here I don't care about it, in by the hub it can have extra paint, but with 3 coats around 20 minutes apart. Well, it was a long time coming, a lot of prep for this wheel, a lot of work went into it. 3 coats of primer, boy oh boy, it's starting to really look nice. This will all get sanded down a day or two from now, but that was well worth the wait and well worth all the work. That is going to really look nice. It's funny how a day like today brings back a lot of good memories of doing these wheels. Actually, it brings back memories of doing Glenn's wheels. For that Ducati, we really had, that was some adventure. So now I have to think through another issue. I have a choice of I could paint the edge of the rim yellow when this is all primed, and that'll be a couple of days from now, and then lay out the stripe, or I could paint it black and then airbrush in the stripe. But in either case, we're not going to use tape, it'll be paint. But it's something to think about. And when I did those R1 wheels, I really put my heart and soul into it. That was really, talk about a labor of love. But the FZR is becoming a labor of love. It's taken on a life of its own. We're headed toward the 4th month of working on it. And it's still, the winter's showing no sign of letting up. And boy, that's a milestone on the FZR project. It looks like Luciano's stuff is drying up beyond perfect. This was quite a day, quite a day. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'm very happy the way this day played out. It was a long day. It played out well.